Welcome back to another episode of the Auto Accident Attorneys Podcast. I'm your host at Attorney Ali. This podcast is brought to you by the Auto Accident Attorneys Group, where our motto is simple: we take care of you. While this podcast has auto accident related issues, I try to cover so much more than that. Last week, we actually talked about mattresses and how to pick up an appropriate mattress after you've suffered an injury in an auto accident. Today, I have the real pleasure of having two amazing attorneys with me on the podcast today. These two guys are from Avery, Carnes. And if you can guess, I have Ben Avery and Trey Carnes with me today. Guys, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome. I hope the drive wasn't too far.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to be here, man. This is awesome. Super cool little outfit.
Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate you. This is the first time you've been here?
First time I've been in the building. I mean, it's awesome. It looks like a WeWork.
Yeah.
Nice.
Got the green wall.
Yeah.
Well, before we jump into the topic, which today I would love having professionals with me today to talk about client expectations, case value, some of the issues that maybe consumers that are going to retain counsel might want to consider and know what it is that they're getting into. But before we jump into that, I would love if each of you would just give me a brief intro about yourself and how you wound up here today.
Well,
Prison.
yeah.
It all starts with jail.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I do have a story with the attorney where I met him in jail before a deposition, but
I got the story how we met.
yeah.
I guess that matters. And it's a plug for Ben's dad, Craig. Great guy, seasoned lawyer. I think he's probably tried more cases than any single lawyer.
He's tried a lot.
In Georgia. I'm fresh out of law school. Working right down the road actually with a PI firm. Had a case come up and dude, I boogered it up. I'm 3 days out of law school and I screwed something up. And to this day, I don't remember what it is, but not surprisingly messed something up. And Craig was counsel opposite. He was on the defense side. And then, I picked up the phone, kind of hat in hand. I'm like, man, I messed this up. And, I got the long talking to. Craig is a little long-winded sometimes if he wants to be. I mean, talks for a living. So, and basically says, Trey, we all screw up. It's happened, just recognize that I'm going to let you, kind of get away with this one or give you a get out of jail free card. But remember that, that this was a gift and you should, have the same grace with somebody that you come across, because it will happen again. And luckily, Ben is my grace. So he was the one, he's my make a wish. So he's my gift that I brought back on. Now, and Ben was working for him. Yeah. I was working for him at the time. And Ben and I kind of started talking a lot through the case, and he was going through law school. And so I met Ben 3 days out of law school, one of my first cases, and he wasn't even a lawyer yet.
Yeah.
So
I'm older, but younger.
yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I took the delayed route to being a lawyer.
Well, it's aged well on you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with my dad being a lawyer, the last thing I wanted to do was be a lawyer, right? I tried everything I could to avoid being an attorney. And then eventually I was like, I got to get a real job. And so I decided I was going to go to law school, started off working with my dad doing insurance defense. And then after about 3 years, switched over to the plaintiff side. And then I guess I've been doing that since 2016. But I will say, starting on the defense side has given me an incredible perspective for evaluating cases, helping clients understand what's really going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They, like we're going to talk about later, their expectations can go a certain way, and if you don't have the correct experience, you might not be able to manage them correctly. But I'll be forever grateful that that's where I started. And of course, being my dad, he just threw me straight into the fire, right? I think day one, he just handed me, if I was like, hey, you've got a deposition today. I'm like, what?
I'm a huge believer in trial by fire. I think that's really the only way to learn. You can only prepare so much. And if you wait, it's also you've got a new baby on the way.
Yeah.
It's not going to be your first, but I'm sure you probably have gone through this. You're like, well, I want to wait until I don't think I'm ready for it. You could take that aspect in any part of life. You'll never be ready for it. You have to do the thing before you're ready.
Yeah. You're never ready for anything, right?
Right.
You can prepare as much as you want, but until it actually happens, you're really not ready for it. You may hope that you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, until it starts to happen, I mean, things could change immediately.
But it doesn't matter how prepared you are, you're going to screw up. Like
Yeah.
we're all going to screw up, right? And you kind of just hope that the people that kind of are holding your feet to the fire realize that they've been there too. And like we all got to learn at a point. But I think you're totally right. I mean, the way you learn more by getting into, we've all been in law school and you go through law school and you get out and you know nothing, right? We spent 3 years of hell and you get out and you know nothing, right? And they give you the bar books and it's like, all right, go pass this test. And
Well, when the interest vests after a life.
sure, and the rule against perpetuity.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
That was a law school joke. Sorry.
Yeah.
Boo. Oh yeah, it's just consumer facing.
Consumer facing.
Yeah.
You guys are doing amazing plaintiff's work. When did you two come together?
January 1st is our official start day of this year, but all throughout last year, we'd kind of see each other at different events and be like, hey, man.
We just flirt a little.
Yeah.
A lot of across the room, a lot of tire kicking.
Yeah.
Tire kick. He wore me down. I think that was always my thing. At the end of the day, I'm going to wear you down. Like I'm gonna get what I want, but it might take me a minute. And
I know what I want. I go after it.
That's right.
Wow. Everything this guy says is sexy.
Makes you feel good. It's getting hot in here.
Well, congratulations. You got a real handsome one.
Oh, you don't. If only we could all be so lucky.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ben, you sort of teed up the topic of valuation. One of the things that we deal with a lot on our intake side here in our firm is when we're taking the case on, we're asking questions. The clients, they have 2 big questions that they ask every single time, and it's not even on my radar at that time in the beginning. You guys already know what it is. 1, what's your fee?
Yeah.
And then 2, how much is this case worth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And
the fee thing I think needs to be like talked about first, and maybe this is good, maybe this is bad. In Atlanta and having the ability to travel as much as I know you travel a ton, and I do, and Ben does as well. And going across the country, going across the world, you don't drive down any of these metropolitan areas and see the just like you're drinking from a fire hose of these advertising lawyers, right? They're everywhere, and it's just like. And it's well, we started it. We do work for 30 or 40%, right? No, we'll do it for 35. We'll do it for 20. Now we're in these 25. And this is not a jab, but you get these 25% lawyers, and it's like at a point in every product, it's got to suffer, right? Like if you're cutting overhead and you're cutting fees and you're cutting what the price of a product, it's going to start to suffer. And to your point. It's like the first call I get, it's like, well, this lawyer told me I could do it for X. And I'm like, that's fine. And, there are plenty of times where Ben and I make the decision that, this is not the client that we need to represent. If we're already worried about, the difference in a 5% fee, and they're not necessarily worried about the product that they're going to get, that's probably not the right client for us. And so we've been lucky to be able to pick and choose the clients that we take. And I think that a lot of lawyers forget that. It's just like, let's get as many as possible. But
yeah. And I think, and like I said, I started off on the defense side, and everyone knows that defense attorneys bill by the hour, right? Well, what they don't know, and a consumer would never know, is these attorneys that are being assigned to the defendant in a case, right? The insurance companies are now paying those attorneys a flat fee. And I've talked to all of these defense attorneys because I'm still friends with a lot of them. And they say, when we get these flat fee cases, you're not motivated to work the case up as much. So it goes to what Trey was just saying about, what level of support do you want on your case? Do you want someone that's just trying to flip it quick and make a quick dollar? Or do you want someone that's going to be invested with you and walking with you hand in hand every step of the way? Because, the old adage is true. You truly get what you pay for. But, something to remember is you don't actually pay for it as a client, right? You never come out of pocket to us. You don't pay for any expenses. We front those. You don't ever reach in your pocket and hand us $1. It just comes out of the settlement at the end. And so our interests are always aligned with our clients. We want to do the best job possible, not just because we have integrity and want to have a good firm, but we want those clients to appreciate the work that we have done for them. So, it's a tough sell on people because, they hear the percentage, but, if you break it down of, how much work we're actually doing throughout the case and things like that, it ends up being how it should be.
I absolutely agree, but I think that the consumer may not appreciate or have a level of appreciation what the difference is in the work that attorneys do.
100% agree.
Our product is invisible for the most part, right?
Oh yeah.
The one thing where I think consumers should be concerned, or they should at least know this, is that the fee, and I have this conversation if I have to hop on an intake call, your fee right now, we're talking about a difference in percentages of zero.
Right.
Right now,
Right.
the
A
offer on the
hypothetical
table.
number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes a difference if you're picking just based on fee. When you go to, let's say that you're going to pay a 25% fee. Okay, you pay 25% of a $10,000 settlement. Let's say there's like $7,000 in medical bills.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't turn out in your benefit.
Right.
If you could have gone and paid a higher percentage, let's say it's 33% of 25,000, which is the state minimum,
Right.
with a lot less incurred medical bills, your net settlement at the end is so much more important than what the percentage you're going to pay from
Right.
the settlement.
It's like what do they say? Seeing the forest for the trees, right? If the client stays short sighted and looking at, like you said, just a zero number right now, well, I'm just going to go what might save me money in the long run.
Yeah.
Is that really going to happen? Probably not.
I think the reason a lot of consumers get hung up on that is because the only other time they're experienced in contingency fee is like sales commissions for like a real estate transaction.
Right.
So they're like, well, my house is valued at $800,000. I want to get a broker that'll do it for 5% instead of 6%. That makes sense,
Yeah.
but that's not at all.
No, that's not how we, and when you look at the product that you're buying, right, and using your analogy of real estate, right, like, and these real estate agents, some of them have varying degrees of contingency, right, but at the end of the day, you're still getting the house, right. The house is the goal at that point.
Right.
In our world, the goal is arbitrary. We have no idea what the goal is. The goal is as much as we can get for that is adequately compensating the client, right? And so I think that the problem that the everyday consumer doesn't see is the value of the product. I think inherently, call it recession, call it the American way, call it the way that people function. If I can pay less for something, I want to pay less for it. But the problem is what a lot of people don't look at is the different in the value of the product itself, and it's very difficult for us to say, I'm better. No, I'm better. No, I'm better. Right. And what at the end, you don't know until the number's on the table. And for consumers, they don't know what they're buying. So their only retort is, hey, we take 5% less, we take 10% less. So-and-so down the street, so they were going to do it for this. And I kind of draw the connection or the comparison to buying the sofa at Walmart versus buying the sofa at, I don't know, one of the nice places, Crate and Barrel, right? So you're getting a Crate and Barrel. I don't know if Crate and Barrel's even nice, but it's nice.
Sounds nice.
It's nice for me. I don't know. You're getting a Crate and Barrel, couch versus a Walmart couch, and I think that there's a lot of education that needs to be given to the consumer that not all lawyers are equal, not all firms are equal, not all settlements are equal, and kind of segueing that into our main topic of not all settlements are created equal.
Yeah. If you're on, let's say you're a consumer, you don't practice law, but you know what you know, how would you pick your attorney?
Oh man.
Word of mouth. That'd be my primary thing. If I know someone who has been through an experience, because you think about it again, I go back to, let's remove that a legal case or your representation is anything different than a normal widget or product, right? If I'm now interested in the car market, I'm not just going to go to the first car dealership that I see and say, all right, that's the car I want. If I don't have any experience in the cars at all, I'm not just going to pick the first car. I'm going to research online. I'm going to talk to friends. Hey, what kind of car do you have? Have you had a good experience with it? What have you had any problems? I'm going to read some reviews. I'm going to do all of the research to determine, is this the best product? Not just because it's the first thing in my face and not the first thing that I see on a billboard, not the first thing that gets jammed down my throat on TV or radio or whatever. And I think that the general consumer should do more research as to quality versus the first thing they see.
Yeah. And I think about, am I going to get the attorney when I call the office? Right.
Yeah.
And just about every single one of my clients ends up with my personal cell phone. It's the same number that my kids have, my parents have, just because I want them to be able to get in touch with us. And I know Trey's the same way. And it just goes back to how we like to handle our cases, where we're walking with the client the whole way. So if you need to get in touch with us, you can, right? We might be in a deposition or something, but you can rest assured that you're going to get a text or however you communicated with us, it's going to come back the same way. So that's what I would look for is how am I going to get the best communication possible, but not just from some office staff member. Like you want to actually talk to the person that's working your case up, right?
I think it's important if you need the lawyer, you should be able to get to them. And maybe this is my pitch to the consumer. If you're not talking to your lawyer, they're not calling you back, you need to get a new lawyer. I think that's just the reality. There are plenty of occasions where, and Ben and I have staff where staff members will call back clients, right? That's part of the experience. Maybe I can't get to you right away. Maybe Ben's in court. Maybe we're doing something. And we want to make sure that client is feeling heard. But at the same time, if you need to talk to your lawyer, you should be able to talk to your lawyer. They're the ones that are representing. They're the ones you're paying for, right? And I think somewhere, if my wife sees this, she's gonna be laughing because every time I talk to a client, I'm like, "This is my cell phone. This is the same number my wife and my kids had. Like, if you need me, call me." Like, and you know, and it's a bit salesy, but it's real.
Sure.
I get thousands of text messages, calls a day, and you know, it's important to us, and it's important to, I think, all of the good firms that their clients have access to them, and you know, we see these massive firms that take in these huge volumes of cases, and you just can't field and have a good client attorney relationship if you don't have access. And I'm not saying that you're a bad lawyer if you don't have it's a bad firm you don't have the cell phone. Like that's probably overreaching for a lot of folks, but I think it's important that you have access, and whether that's email or some type of messaging system or texting or whatever it is, you should be able to talk to your lawyer.
Yeah, I relate. It's like if you're going to the doctor and you're going to have a procedure, right? And we try cases, so we see the case all the way till the very end if need be. Well, if you're going in to have a procedure, right, you want to actually talk to the doctor that's going to be doing the procedure on you, versus just talking to the front office staff the whole time. And then all of a sudden, this guy shows up, says, "All right, you're about to go under anesthesia," and you're like, "Who are you?" Right?
Yeah.
That's the last thing you want to have happen. And so we kind of take that mentality to our law practice of, we don't know how far this case is going to go. A lot of our cases are in litigation, so we prepare them as if they're going to go to trial, because that's the only way to get real value.
Mm-hmm.
There's trial value and there's settlement value, but to get the ultimate value on a case, you have to work it up like it's going to go the distance, because the insurance companies know that, that if a case is being kind of mismanaged or not pushed properly, they're not going to offer as much money as maybe the case is worth, right? They know who will try a case and who won't try a case, right? So when you're picking a lawyer, that's something that's also important, because again, this is why I talk about my defense work, but there was a plaintiff's attorney when I was first starting out that the insurance company knew that right up until the day before trial, that guy would settle that case, right? He was never going to try the case. And everyone knew it. Great guy, unbelievable guy, but everyone knew this case is never going to go in front of a jury. And so when they know that, they've got tons of resources, tons of money. And so these insurance companies will collect that data and use it to their advantage. Because, let's be honest.
They know everything.
Yeah, they're in the business of saving money, right? They're not in the business of paying out claims. They're in the business of saving money for themselves.
Right.
They're worth $80+ billion. And so, you got to use whatever you can as a lawyer to your advantage to make sure that the client is taken care of. Because at the end of the day, they're the one who had their life changed by something that happened that they didn't ask for.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I've been through it personally, and it's tough, because you're like, what, this happened to me, right? And they don't care. There's just no other way to put it. They don't. And you got to figure out a way to make them care. And the only way to do that is to, listen to your attorney's advice, make sure you do what you're supposed to do on your end. But ultimately, it's about like getting your story across, right? And that's ultimately what a trial is. We hope that that doesn't go that far for their own sake, because it is stressful for somebody. But
I think that's probably the most important part too for consumers is, and I would say this for everybody, even in a car wreck, get a lawyer. Like, this whole and we're in the South, right? So everybody's like, and I use this analogy all the time. You pick up the phone, "Hey man, how are you?" "I'm good. How are you?"
Yeah.
And we're so quick to say I'm good, and I'm I would say for the majority of people, we're not good, man. We're not just out here like everybody's not just great, right? We just say
People have stuff going on.
Yeah, it's what we're supposed to say. But and being in the South, I know you're from Cali and you probably haven't seen it as much, but like in the South, man, everybody's, hey, I'm fine, man. How are you? And it's almost like the worse they are, the nicer they are about it. And
they don't want to burden people with their problems.
And these calls are being recorded, and like they're like, oh man, I've known my agent for 30 years. They would Tom would never do me wrong. It's like, man, that agent is selling you insurance.
He is not
money.
He is not a part of the claim.
And yeah, Tom may be a great guy. You may go to church with him, but he's not the one that's processing it. And that adjuster is adversarial to you. Their entire job, their entire purpose is to diminish the value of your claim. And I don't care how big or how small. It is not. It doesn't. You don't come in a pocket for sell contingency base. Get a lawyer. Yeah. There is a lawyer that will take your case.
That needs to be repeated. That
Get a
lawyer's job.
Yeah.
Oh, not that part. We'll continue saying that part.
Yeah.
No, but the part about what the adjuster's job is, I think so many people, you watch college football and you're like, I'm in good hands with my neighbor.
Yeah.
Their entire.
They are not your friend.
No.
Their entire
purpose
is to maximize shareholder returns.
Correct.
Right.
That's it. Point blank, hard stop.
Correct.
That means not paying out on your claims
or trying to diminish it as much as possible.
Yeah.
And the further, I mean, we all know this, like they're incentivized. That person sitting across the phone from you is incentivized. The more money that they can save, the more money they make.
Yeah.
Personally, right? Not even for the company. And it's like, it's just really sad. We see it a lot of times like, well, I don't want to sue the guy that hit me. We ain't suing the guy that hit you yet. Like, we're not even there. And they're not, 99% of the time, they're not responsible.
And that's something that a consumer should know, because this is one of the first questions I get is, look, I don't want to sue that person or whatever. In every person's policy for their automobile insurance, it says we will provide a defense for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So just because in Georgia, you cannot sue an insurance company. Right? You have to sue the person that injured you or the company or whoever caused you harm.
Why is that, counsel?
We don't have enough time, I'm sure.
Call your legislator.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, that insurance company is paying for the lawyer on the other side. It's going to be not the guy who hit you paying the judgment at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be insert insurance company, right? That's who pays all this stuff. They pay the lawyer. If they make a decision that is adverse to their policyholder, they're going to pay that judgment on his behalf anyway. Mm-hmm. So don't feel bad about bringing a claim, excuse me, because it's your one chance. I had a case one time where this girl called me, bad accident, and I said, well, what happened, this, that, and the other. And I said, okay, well, you need to see a doctor or something. So she sees somebody and then just kind of flakes out on it and then calls me 2 years later. And the 2 years is important because in Georgia, you have 2 years to file a lawsuit to protect your claim. And so she calls me 2 years afterwards and says, my back is just killing me and I think I have to have surgery. Mm. I said, well, did you ever go do anything about it? No. And I had to explain to him, I said, I understand life happens, but you've got to look after yourself. And if you're at all concerned about any part of your body about being hurt after an accident, just go get it checked out, right? No one can ever fault you for going to get examined because you're worried about an injury. Mm-hmm. And, I'll be honest, that person, her father actually appreciated my honesty on that so much, gave me a gift card to Chili's or something afterwards. But I said,
2 for 1s.
I would love to help you.
Flood Chili's.
Yeah. But you waited too long.
Yeah.
To do anything about it. And it is your one chance. And what Trey was saying earlier about how in the South, everyone's quick to say, I'm good. That also applies to your doctors. Mm-hmm. If you're hurting, tell them. They're there to help you. But if you walk in and you're saying, how you feeling? They don't mean right then.
Right.
Right. If you go, let's say you go to a physical therapy appointment on Thursday and your next one's on Tuesday, and you walk in on Tuesday and you feel okay, but on Saturday and Sunday you were laying on the couch all day because your back was so tight and you were just miserable, tell them about that, right? Because we say this as lawyers, if I know about it, I can handle it.
Yeah.
But if I don't know about it, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to put everything out there. Don't be embarrassed. It is your one chance to have this situation righted. And our legislature, this is important for everyone to know, our legislature, that means the government of Georgia, has decided that the only way to fix harm that's been done to you is through compensation.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way to put you back a minute before this happens and you just decide to turn right instead of left, right? There's no way to do that. So our government has decided that you are to be compensated for this. So use that, because you might need that money down the road for something. I had back surgery from an accident. It's awful, having to deal with the stuff that comes with it, right? You think it's going to be fine down the road, but it's just, nothing will ever be the same once you're injured. It's like if you break a bone, sure, they can throw a cast on you and it'll be repaired, but it's always going to be a little bit weaker than it was before the injury.
Talking about communicating with your physicians, I can't tell you how many times I've been in a situation where we're evaluating a case on the tail end and the client is like, how come the insurance company hasn't offered to tender the entire policy limits. And they're like, how come they're not doing that? I'm still in pain. And I will literally sit down with them and look at their medical records and be like, you said here that you were feeling like 2 weeks of 4 out of 10, and then you discharged because there was no more pain.
Right.
And they're like, no, well, I just didn't want to treat anymore. I was like, well, you can't, you got to communicate the correct way.
Right.
You can say I'm in pain, but I don't want to treat.
Yeah.
But don't be dishonest with the physician in order to get out of treatment, because now
you shoot yourself in the foot. You're 100% right. And I think that and I say this to all my clients. Again, I've had the pleasure of representing some really, really great people that in my opinion, really want to do quote unquote the right thing, right? They don't want to create these situations where they're creating treatment or they're creating a narrative that they're more hurt than they are, right? And I think that what happens is you almost kind of they err on the side of playing He-Man. And I tell all my folks, I'm like, hey, now is not the time to be a hero. Now it's not time to be a tough guy, right? Like, you want to communicate to these doctors on what's going on. And, a pretty timely conversation because of the changes that we've seen in legislature in the last session, right? That we flipped over from this, medical dynamic where it was kind of more of a formula to now we've got more of this intangible piece that we're going to be required to be able to prove up and show the insurance company that this had more of a general effect, less about dollars and cents, right? It used to be, we've all practiced law for 15 years now. So it used to be, here's your medicals and here's the number, right? This is what you would get. So it was very, very monotonous, very conveyor belt. Now it's more about, how did this affect your everyday life, right? And how did this, keep you from playing with your grandkids? How did this affect your gardening? How did this affect your driving? How does this affect your job, right? And there's a lot more subjective information that has to come through. And the only way that we're really able to get that in is through your conversations with your providers, with your doctors, with your physical therapists. I find that
family and friends too.
I find that physical therapists know more than anybody, right? You're laying there on that table and you're in pain or you're vulnerable, but you're laying there. You're there with them for 30 minutes to an hour. And you're having these conversations about how this is affecting your life. And a good physical therapist is documenting those things, right? And those things are important. And I think it just goes back to, again, telling the consumer, telling the patient, telling the person who's injured, now's not the time to be the hero. It's not time to be a tough guy. Tell your providers what's going on with you and how this wreck and how these injuries have affected you.
Yeah. The story matters more now than it ever did before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tort reform kind of, gave us a new groundwork. And I think that there's a lot of challenges to it. I personally, obviously, I don't think any of us agree that we should have had this big tort reform change. However, I think that what it has done is really make lawyers be better lawyers. I think it makes us tell those stories. It makes us argue for our client and argue that, hey, that this did affect their life. And it doesn't really matter that they went and had health insurance or didn't. We're talking about how this affected this person. And that's the way we've always done it, and that's important to us. And I think that makes lawyers be lawyers, and it makes your cases really stand apart from kind of the neck my back kind of stuff.
And the issue at that
25% stuff.
And that 25%.
The issue becomes getting an insurance adjuster to understand what you've gone through, right? And until litigation happens, it's really tough to do that. So that's like we're all just talking about. That's why it's extremely important to communicate. Like you cannot stress that enough. You have to communicate everything to everyone.
I'm glad you said it that way. I've got like a fundamental question, a philosophy almost. Is your perspective that we need to educate the adjuster as to what happened so that the adjuster understands the plaintiff? Or do you think we have to educate the adjuster to show how much exposure their client?
I think that's interesting. I think I think there's two types of interactions. I won't even say two types of lawyers because I think we can be chameleons sometimes. I think that there's two types of lawyers, and you got the lawyers who bang on the table, scream, and you don't know what you're doing, and yelling at these adjusters and creating more of an adversarial situation, right? And then you've got the other side of it that's like, we understand that this is their job. We understand that this is their process. We understand this is monotony for them, right? We were all joking kind of before we started recording about the headsets and the call centers and all that kind of stuff. They've had thousands of files they deal with, right? And so, kind of the way that I handled it, and Ben and I have a very similar philosophy that it's, let me tell you what's going on. Let me empower you to go and talk to your superiors and explain the story and understand who our client is and understand what's going on with them and how this has negatively affected them. Tell them the story so that they are engaged and that they understand so that they can then go and be an advocate on that side for you. And I think that empowering the adjusters to go and talk to the people that hold that money it has been hugely successful for us.
I mediate also, but one thing that I've realized is you have to give them a reason to go up the chain of command. Insurance companies are the most bureaucratic organizations you could ever imagine. Everyone has a boss that has a boss that has a boss, and with each boss,
they're the largest corporations in the world.
Right, but each boss comes with another level of authority, right? Mm-hmm. So the person that calls your client day one about their car has the bottom level of authority. Well, then it'll get transferred to person B and then C and then D, and it just keeps going up. And only until it's like a video game, until you reach the final boss, that's where all the money is, right? And so you have to give, what I like to do is, when you've tried cases, you understand how to do it a little bit easier, but you've got to paint the picture to them and just say, look, if I go try this case, this is what's going to happen, right? You give them like a 30,000-foot view of how the facts are going to be laid out in front of 12 strangers. Because this is, just to let everybody know, this is how an insurance company evaluates a case. What has happened in trial verdicts in that county that your case is pending?
That's important to repeat again.
Yeah. And real quick, though, the case is going to be pending in the county in which the person that hits you or caused the injury lives. Not where you live, not where it happened, but so if you get hit by someone that lives in Lee County, Georgia, that case is going to be filed in Lee County. Insurance company is going to know that, and the counties in Georgia carry different values as far as claims go. So if you're hitting, I used to live in Athens, and I think that's the best example, because if a person that lives in Clark County causes an accident and injures you, you're going to get one value. If someone that lives in the neighboring county, Oconee, hits you, same injuries, everything, try the same case, the value in Oconee is going to be lower than Clark County. And
explain why that is.
It's just the demographics of the county, right? You've got different people. What I've noticed is that when the county is made up of more rural workers, right, that are out in like working on farms and stuff, they're a little less sympathetic to people's injuries, right? Now, if you've lost a limb, you're put in a wheelchair, had some major surgery, it's different. But when it's more soft tissue in nature, maybe you just have a few injections, it's almost as if they can't be bothered with it, right? They're worried about so many different things when they come into that courtroom. And so these insurance companies pool all of that information, right? Every verdict that has ever happened in every county, they know that. And so as soon as that case hits their desk, they look at the county and it just gets routed to like a different evaluation level. And
well, I think that's an important point too, because kind of what we've been tiptoeing into of our quote unquote topic of the day, right, is that not all these cases are treated equal. They're not the same, right? And just because your brother or your sister or your cousin or your friend got a specific settlement amount or a specific verdict amount, that doesn't mean that that's what you're going to get. No two injuries are the same. No two people are the same. No two,
Insurance companies are the same.
Insurance companies are the same. No two venues are the same. They don't evaluate them that way. And I think that, to piggyback off what Ben said, you've taken Athens type place and you take these blue collar style workers and they're used to dealing with crap, right? These guys these are manual laborers that they wake up with back pain, right? They all wake up with knee pain. They all wake up with these various things, right? And so when they see some, I refer to them as malingerers, right? You see a malingerer up there on the stand telling you about, I can't go to work because my back is bothering me, right?
But it wasn't communicated to the doctor,
right? And it wasn't. You didn't tell anybody. There are pictures of you on Facebook going body surfing, right? Like they're just not sympathetic to that. And I think that aside from the injuries, you also have venue play, right? And I'm from Bartow County, right? Cartersville. I love that place. It's great, and it's much bigger than it was when I grew up there. But being from Cartersville in Bartow County, $1 million is a lot of money, right? Adversely, you get to Fulton, $1 million is $1 million. Everybody knows what $1 million is. They're used to it. It doesn't inflame people as much as it would in a more rural county. So I think that venue, as we're seeing, I think really, really, and as we're now having to get away from the calculation of damages and more of the story behind it, I think it matters even more. I think that you've really got to think about and going back to the consumer geared, like pick a lawyer that understands venue, pick a lawyer that understands how to tell that story and how to tell that story in that venue, right? Like it's important. I do pretty well in front of a bunch of rural country folks because that's who I am. And I like going in those places and at the same time, I think that you just need to understand that there is a holistic approach to every one of these cases, and none of them are the same. And as a consumer, just because your buddy got, $250,000 for a neck back injury doesn't mean that's what your case is worth. Maybe worth more, maybe worth less. But there's a lot of variables.
Trey, how about if my buddy got a $250,000 settlement and he just had soft tissue injury? I have to have like 3-level cervical fusion and I can't get more than $25,000. Is that my lawyer's fault? What's going on with that?
Well,
how come that happens?
That's such a loaded. Thanks for putting me on the spot. That's such a loaded question. I mean, look. Unfortunately, we are governed by limits of liability, right? Like, and unfortunately, I don't know the number, so I'm going to make one up. 99% of the people floating around here have minimum policy limits, which in Georgia we know is $25,000. I think that's why.
I think it's 3 out of 5.
There you go. Okay, you're smarter than I am. So yeah, I mean, but it's most of them, right? And so I feel like we always, whenever we're pitching to consumers, we're talking to consumers, we're like beating in their head, UM. And if you don't know what UM is, it's uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. And I jokingly have kind of like evolved it a little bit. I think it's FUBU, right? Remember the old clothing brand, For Us, By Us? Like that's what it is. You buy this insurance for you to protect you. And it's FUBU insurance. You have to carry this insurance because again, using your number, these people are running around with $25,000 in coverage. So in your example, if the injuries are there and the insurance is there, it may be worth more, it may be worth less, but we're handicapped a lot of time, or handcuffed a lot by these limits. And the only way that you can actively protect yourself against being capped, in that situation, you've got to now have a surgery. And there were plenty of occasions. Unfortunately, Ben and I represented a very nice family about a month ago, and their father was killed in a motorcycle wreck. And unfortunately, we all heard this story. All the lawyers have heard this story. No UM, right? And so this person, wasn't necessarily doing anything wrong. They weren't drunk. They didn't do anything, necessarily punitive. They ran a stop sign and unfortunately didn't see a motorcycle hit the guy. And he was in his 70s. Very healthy, had a wife, the whole thing, and grown kids, and there was just no insurance. And you kind of talk about your friend who got $250,000 settlement. That's awesome. Their lawyer probably did a great job for him, and if it's soft tissue, it sounds like they did a fantastic job for him. Unfortunately, you're capped on what you're protected by yourself, and so I think that again, beat it in the heads. It needs to be said 10,000 times. There needs to be billboards for that. Get UM insurance.
And the correct type.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to it, right? You were saying this. This is just like flows out.
Yeah.
Like you go back to talking about your adjuster Tom, right? The guy in your small town who you've been with for 35 years, and he's always taking care of you. Sends you Christmas cards and sends you edible arrangements for your birthday, whatever it is, right?
Man. better insurance agent than I've ever had.
Right. Well, so, but these guys, they sell you like, yeah, sure, we know about UM. We're gonna sell UM. Yeah, that's great. But I think the general consumer doesn't understand there's two types, right? We've got add-on UM, which is truly the one that you need. The add-on excess UM is what you need. We don't, if you read in there offset or traditional or any of those kind of things,
Reduced by,
you're buying nothing. You're paying an extra premium, and obviously
One
it
thing,
varies.
I hate to jump in, but
Yeah.
I want to make this an important note for the consumers, because I think one thing that consumers don't know is that not all jurisdictions even permit add-on.
Yeah.
In California, for example,
Yeah.
you're prohibited from purchasing add-on. It's all reduced by policies. So if you live in one of these jurisdictions like the state of Georgia and you have access to a product such as add-on UM protection,
right?
100% you should get that.
Absolutely. And get as much as you can reasonably afford. I think that's the other piece, because insurance is that, I think about the Aflac duck floating around all the time. Like, you don't need it until you do, right? And then when you do, you really need it.
Yeah, and I've had clients that have said, like, well, I don't want to go after my own insurance because they're afraid that my premiums are going to go up by making this claim. And I will quote my father, but I have never seen someone's policy go up because they made a UM claim. And the reason is because that UM carrier, right, is able to subrogate, which means get their money back from the person that caused the accident and injury if they so choose, right? So they have a way to be repaid, so they don't take it out on their own insured. But yeah, I've become like a insurance salesman at the end of every case.
We all are.
Get more, as much, and in Georgia, it's important to note, you can only buy as much UM as you have in liability, right? So you can't try to game the system and get a $25,000 liability policy and then get like a $250,000 UM policy. So that's why Trey said, get as much as you can afford. So whatever liability you can afford, matching that with UM add-on is like $6 extra. Like it's so cheap. But I truly think that insurance agents are dropping the ball, because that would be an extra. They're getting paid off of that, right? But it's shocking to me.
I think that it messes with their exposure, though, right? Like, so if you're selling $25,000 offset UMs, they're getting that premium, and they know they're never going to have to pay it because you got state minimum limits. They're literally selling. If you're buying, here's the announcement: if you have $25,000 in offset UM you pay $1 for it, or you pay $100 for it, you are buying zero coverage. There is no coverage for that. It doesn't exist. And I think that
unless it's like a
true uninsured
hit and run, yeah.
But come on, I wouldn't want to roll it down very low. Right. It's crazy. And
3 out of 5 times.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
If I had, he was kind enough to come on here. He lives in the community, a great guy. I had an insurance broker on, and he told me that a little bit of inside scoop in the industry right now. There's a shift going on trying to push people into medical payments coverage as opposed to UM and like high medical payments.
Interesting.
50,000 medical payments.
I could guess why.
Go for it.
So it becomes like, I'm terrible at math, but when you get into UM, it becomes a mathematical equation, right? So like example one would be, you get hit by someone that's got a $25,000 policy, and let's say you've got a $50,000 add-on policy, right? And you get that $25,000 first layer of coverage, and then you go after your UM coverage. The UM company does not owe a single dime, technically, until the value is determined by a jury to be over $25,000, right? So if you went to trial and got a verdict for $26,000, they'd write you a check for $1,000, right? Well, the medical payments comes in because there's a non-duplication of payments provision in all of these policies. And so if they give you like a $50,000 med pay policy and you've got your $50,000 UM policy, you go get your $25,000, right? And let's just say your bills were $50,000, right? Instead of they're going to pay you that $50,000 in med pay, and then you're going to go get a verdict for like $75,000. Yeah. The 25's already been credited. Well, they get an offset for that $50,000 in med pay, so that the client isn't going to get anything for themselves.
And they're also not dealing pain and suffering in the intangible piece. Yeah, that's a fair point.
It's only for the special damages, which is the medical bills for the consumers.
Where we're at in legislature right now, that makes so much more sense that, hey, if we're just going to pay this dollar for dollar,
Yep.
done with it, we're out. We don't have to pay any. We're not exposing ourselves to excess over medical.
Because the true value of a claim is what I said at the beginning. It's what happened to you. Your medical bills aren't what happened to you. Your injuries and your treatment are what happened to you. And so we have two types of damages: special damages, which is medical bills, things you can actually you get a receipt for,
Quantify.
basically, right?
Tangible.
And then the general damages is the pain and suffering, which is 7 different things, but that's what happened to you, right? That's the part of your case that matters most to anybody. And that's why, you got to tell everyone what's going on. Some clients will I've encouraged them to do this, but like, just keep a little diary of things. The most impactful stories at trial or at mediation or in depositions, or even just telling your lawyer so that they can tell the insurance adjuster, are real world examples, right?
First-hand accounts.
Yeah, I will never forget a case where I was actually defending it, and the guy was he was from Walton County, just a really good guy. I think he was a pastor. I asked him about his injuries and stuff, and he's just, yeah, I think he had surgery, but real tough guy, right? Just a really good person. And so I was like, okay, so then I deposed his wife afterward. And so he's sitting at the head of the table, kind of away from everybody. And I'm asking us, my question was just, hey, tell me about your husband since this accident. And she goes, his job is to put the star on the tree. And since this accident, he can't. And I just hear him break down. And I called up the insurance company. I was like, you better pay this case.
You don't want this in front of a jury, right?
If 12 people hear this story, like that was 10 plus years ago. I still get chills just thinking about it, because it was the most concrete and just real example
it's common.
that
It's common,
anybody
right?
could relate to.
Yeah.
But if you don't make note of that, or if you can't get on the floor to play with your grandkids or your kids and you have to stay up on the couch, like, just make note of it, because that matters, and you should be compensated for that change in your life, right? You didn't ask for that to happen.
It's so digestible for a jury too. Like, I know we all have kids, and that's my job too, right? Like, and putting yourself in the position of a juror, right? Sitting there listening to this, like, that's something I can understand.
Yeah.
I'll never be able to understand a broken arm, right? I've never broken my arm. I don't understand that. Does that hurt? I'm sure it does. It sounds terrible. But you don't have real empathy for the situation, right? And I think that there's a huge difference in having sympathy and empathy, and using that example and being able to relate to a jury in that level of kind of real everyday stuff. I mean, that's huge. Yeah, I've never heard that story.
And that goes back to why, your example earlier is like, hey, I had a soft tissue case, but I got $250. Obviously the coverage would have to be there, but at the same time, you can have soft tissue injuries that greatly affect your life, right? We don't know, in your example, we don't know how old the person was, what their activity level was like. There's still interruptions that can occur. And to quote my father, properly tried, those facts can be laid out in the most valuable way, right? When you have those examples to tell someone, because we're not able to make what's called the golden rule argument, right? Imagine this was you. Can't do that, right? That's the first objection will be made, and then start all over, right? So the only way you can get around that is coming up with examples that make you put yourself in that person's shoes, right? When you hear that story about the guy in the Christmas tree, you transport yourself there, like, man, what if I couldn't put my kid on my shoulders anymore? You don't have to have surgery. If you had some kind of soft tissue thing in your back or your neck or something, and you can't do that anymore, and your kid's 3 years old, and we've all seen these things on Instagram where, like, you've got your kids are with you
got 14 more summers.
Right, yeah.
You got 12 more Christmases.
Yeah,
right?
so then you find out what those statistics are. Those experiences become even more valuable, right? You don't want to miss those things. And then now all of a sudden you can't put your kid, like, I mean, my youngest is 10 years old right now. We have a baby on the way, but my youngest is 10, so like, she's over that.
Mm-hmm.
When my son's born, if you told me that I couldn't put him on my shoulders for like that period of time where it's so much fun, it would kill me, right?
Yeah.
And so if that gets taken away from somebody,
That's real. It's
you gotta
something
tell them
related
about
to
it.
Yeah.
So along those lines, I think one conversation I've had other attorneys on the podcast before, but a conversation I haven't had is if a consumer has a case right now and they're sitting on an offer of settlement right now, and they're debating whether they should accept it or litigate it. What should that consumer be thinking about?
One's expenses, right? So we're saying it's the offers come in and litigation has not been started.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
I would say that, well, first of all, a lot of people don't understand this, right? You sign a contract with a lawyer and it's contingency based. We all know that I don't get paid unless you do. Very clear, right? No fees unless you win, right? We've seen it on the billboard, seen the advertisements, right? What a lot of consumers that Ben and I experience, because we get a lot of cases referred to us from other lawyers who have already pre-signed the case, right? So they were represented by a lawyer that is not us, and the lawyer who is not us has decided, hey, or the client has said, hey, we think we want this to go to litigation. What Ben and I spend a lot of time doing is explaining to them that there is an escalation piece of that contract, right? And so there is a bit of a financial understanding that needs to be done, because 90% of these cases, or 90% of these contracts that exist between the client, the injured party, and the law firm have an escalation piece that says that the contingency fee accelerates or it increases if you take it to trial. And I know you know this, but you put it into litigation. So there's a bit of a balancing that needs to be done. You need to understand that, is the number that I'm taking pre-settlement with my lawyer's fee and the expenses that we've already incurred, what is my real number? What am I taking home, right? And I think that needs to be discussed mainly by your lawyer or with your lawyer, right? They're the ones that are going to have a reasonable expectation or a reasonable understanding of what the cost is going to be to go and try this case. And I think that gets lost, right? And so traditionally, you'll see contracts at 35% or 33% pre-litigation. You get ready to put your case into trial, and the second you file that complaint, your lawyer's fee now goes to 35 or 40%, right? So you're dealing with more percentage. However, that's not really the big piece. We're talking a third or a 5% increase. Not that really big of a deal, because we're doing a lot more work. It's viable. Understand it however you want. However, there's a lot of expenses that come out whenever you're trying these cases. I mean, we've got experts that we have to call, and most cases, 99% of cases have to have expert witnesses, right? We've got to talk to that doctor, and doctors are expensive. And they have to take time from their day and be deposed and be interviewed and have to review your treatment and understand all these things are going. And we have to pay for that time. We've also got to pay for accident reconstructionists and a lot of different expenses that come out that are hugely, hugely expensive. And so a lot of times, it may not make financial sense to put that case in litigation, which is, I guess, counter to what we do. But there are plenty enough cases that need to be tried and that need to go down that road, as long as it makes financial sense. At the end of the day, our job is to make sure that person is compensated. Ben talked about it. We can't roll back the hands of time. And until we get that technology, the only thing we have is to get you reasonably compensated. And we're going to do that in the best way that we can. But that may not always mean going and running up $50,000, $60,000 in expenses and increasing our fee, because at the end of the day, that might not put more money in your pocket, and that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just got to listen to your lawyer, right? Any lawyer that's good at what he does or should be able to look at, okay, this is the offer, compare it to the facts and circumstances of the case, and see if hey, look, this is ridiculous. But, we're all obligated to run these things by. And that's when we have those conversations like Trey said, hey, look, we can never promise you anything, right? And everyone should know, if a lawyer promises you a value to your case, talk to somebody else. Because you can't do that, right?
We won't do it. We won't tell anybody what a number is. They ask, what's this thing worth? I don't know.
Yeah. The question I always ask him, I said, I hate asking this question, but I've learned that I have to. What are you wanting to walk away with this case?
Because, reasonable expectation.
Because, they'll say, I want $1 million. Well, I'd love for that to happen, but it's just not going to because of X, Y, and Z, right? There's not that much coverage. Your injuries don't justify it. There's so many circumstances that dictate the value. But, if the offer comes in and it's reasonable to the attorney's eyes, right? You can say, hey, look, because I can't promise you anything down the road, this is what you're looking at. If you're okay with this breakdown, then that's fine. But, if you want to roll the dice, I'm here with you, and, we'll always see if we can, get that number up. But then at the same time, like Trey was saying, if you get an extra $5,000, does it justify
the expense
the
to get there.
expenses that have come with it, right?
I think a lot of lawyers lose sight of the second piece of our title, like lawyer and counselor. I think that the biggest piece of our job is counseling our clients, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I don't make the decision. Ben doesn't make the decision. You don't make the decision, right? We work for our clients and they make the decision. And I think that kind of full circle here, picking a lawyer is picking someone that you feel like or that you have a good relationship with that you can contact that can counsel you on these things and can tell you how to navigate these waters that you've never been in your entire life. We do this hundreds and thousands of times a day, a year, and all of it.
Mm-hmm.
We see it every single day. And I think that a big piece of what a lot of lawyers miss is that we are counselors, right? And that we are supposed to be counseling our client on the best decision for them in that exact moment.
I like that. I picked up 2 things from you today, Trey. So if you see it on my social media, don't get upset. He tossed it up. Royalties, FUBU, and counselor.
There you go.
Didn't see either one coming.
Yeah, and I use that same question actually when it's that pre-litigation to litigation. Some cases we keep in-house. You guys know this. Some cases we refer out. I ask what they believe is reasonable, because if it's unreasonable and I know it to be unreasonable, I let them, it's still their choice. It's their case. But I know that we need to withdraw, because I'm like, if I already know, and I could be wrong, but I'm like, there's no way we're going to get to that number, I withdraw. There was only one time out of maybe probably less than a dozen times I've had to have the conversation. There's only one time that the client said, okay, and we actually withdrew. And when I have that conversation, I'm like, because I'm going to hand it off to litigation counsel, I want them to know that I'm making a really benevolent call. Like, we won't even have a lien. You can take it if you think you can get that somewhere else.
Right.
One time somebody took it, and I found out about 30 days or so later that they just went and settled it at the figure we had gotten. So now we have liens.
You're right.
Yeah, I've explained our contracts to clients before. I said, look, you're going to see a piece in there that probably is because, like, I thought we don't have to pay you anything, and it says, well, we've got to protect ourselves because of situations like that. That's happened to everybody, where someone tries to fire the lawyer after they've worked up a case and gotten some good money on the table because they want to essentially stiff the attorney and the doctors, right?
Right.
Any bills, a hospital, all these things are outstanding that we as lawyers are responsible for making sure they're repaid. Same thing.
Yeah.
I've had that happen at least twice.
That's something I think also clients don't understand, because now about 2 years ago, I started seeing it be more prevalent when the case settles, especially in pre-lit. The insurance company, before they even send the acceptance, will send a letter to the client, be like, hey, we sent.
It's so unethical, man. Like, you're not supposed to be communicating directly with those people, but
I can see why they do it. It's even if they've had a good process throughout, now at the end of the case, it throws this little distrust to kind of make that the relationship degenerates a little bit.
it's further the capstone for what they try to do. They're diminishing and driving a wedge. I mean, that's the whole point.
That's exactly it.
They're doing their job.
But so clients, just for I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, but for the consumer's benefit, the insurance companies will send a letter to the claimant that we represent, being like, hey, before they even send us a letter, we settled this case. This is how much money has gone out. We haven't gotten any money. And even when we get the money, we can't, it has to go into a client trust account.
Right.
You can, everyone here
And it's
loses
clear.
their bar license.
It's got time,
Yeah.
There's a whole thing with it. It's funny though. You're right. And it goes right back to these large corporations understanding, having huge data mines, and they understand consumer behavior. Consumer behavior is you open a letter. We all like getting mail. Like, we don't, because we get so much of it. But like, as a general, like my mother-in-law loves nothing more than getting a letter in the mail, right? Like, she loves it. She got her name on it, opens a letter. It's addressed to her. Cool. Let me read this letter. Oh, wow. It's $45,000. And immediately, without being able to help it, you're like, that's $45,000 for me, right? And then you get the call from your lawyer, and it's like, well, no, we've got the fee because we did the work, we've got the expenses that are associated with this, we got to pay back your medical providers. Don't forget those guys, right? They treated you when you were banged up. We had a lot of clients that forget about those folks, and there's a lot more moving pieces. But I agree with you. I think it's an insurance play, and it's bravo.
But I will tell the insurance or the consumer that your attorney should have gone through all these breakdowns first, right?
We know the number.
They should know. What's interesting though is I had that same situation happen where they mailed that my client knew that we settled her case, and she knew what she was going to get after everything was, taken care of. Well, they sent her the letter regardless. That check ended up getting stolen and negotiated by a bank. And so then I have to, she's like, well, where's my check? I said, so here's what actually happened. We've now got to deal with this process. And so they just, like you said, it just creates this whole ripple, because I'm obviously going to tell her the check got stolen, but at the same time, she's got this piece of paper assuming that I've already got the check from him as well.
Yeah.
Well, now we got to add like 3 weeks onto this, because they've got to.
It just creates an adversarial dynamic, which is what they want.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're, again, consumer facing, they are the enemy in this immediate situation. And that's, there's no other way to sugarcoat that.
I found the same thing on property damage, so much so that if we get a client like a fresh accident, I actually will speak to the client after they've been signed and let them know we're not going to send a letter of representation until the property damage process starts, because they've the moment they get an LOR from the firm, all of a sudden now it's like 3 weeks to determine liability. I don't know about this, and
we're still investigating. They kind of play the drag. And again, going back to it, while we go up against them every day, and we know that they are the speed bump or the impediment to us being able to properly do our job, I do have a bit of admiration for the way that they do it. They're very smart.
They're really good at what they do.
At the way they do it, and the way that because they know that injuries are going to take a while. I think that every consumer knows that. Like, it takes me a minute to get healed, right? It's going to take the lawyer a minute to get the medical records in and get your case settled. It's going to take. They know these things are going to take time. What they don't think about, and what nobody talks about, is the property portion, right? Mm-hmm. Your truck's banged up. My guy's got to go to work, right? Mm-hmm. Insurance company's still investigating. We probably have 20 of these cases sitting right now where they're quote unquote still investigating the wreck. It's a rear-end collision. There's no ands or buts about who's at fault, right? But my guy or my girl's car is still sitting at the shop. And we Ben and I represent this nice 2 folks right now, and they own a gutter business, right? So they're on their way to hang gutters, and they get rear-ended, blows up the back of their trailer with their gutter materials and their work truck. So now their work truck is now sitting in a body repair shop while the insurance company is investigating. And every day that clicks by, these folks are losing money. And yes, we can go and argue lost wages and all of those kind of things. That's fine. It's going to recoup.
But that's so much later.
Yeah, but it doesn't help in the immediacy.
But you've got these folks that are blue collar folks, and they're hard workers, and they're doing what they're supposed to do, and they're trying to make a living for their family. And all the insurance company is doing is sitting there and trying to run out the clock. And that's all they're doing. They're just delaying it so that forces them into a position where they feel like they've got to take whatever it is that they offer.
Yeah.
Again, I hate it. I admire the way that they go about screwing people. They're really good at it.
And that's why plaintiff's bar is so helpful. And I wish consumers knew that and believed that we are truly on their side and not the
ambulance chasers that we get the moniker or the name for. It's sad, right? Because we truly represent the little guy. And I think that even through legislature throughout the last year that we've been dealing with this, we've been called everything under the sun.
Yeah.
The insurance companies are multi-billion-dollar corporations. They're the largest corporations in the world, right? And we represent real people who have been really hurt in really crappy, shitty situations. And for some reason they control the narrative because they got more money, and these guys are ambulance chasers, and they're out for blood. And we all know a lawyer joke, right?
Yeah.
Nobody talks bad about these insurance companies. Everybody's like loves their agent. It's the craziest dynamic that they can create.
Well, so it's funny, you think about like the Allstate commercials, right? The mayhem guy where it's like the tree falls on the guy's car. You don't understand that, like, it's probably your own personal car insurance that's going to have to pay, even though your neighbor's tree limb fell by your car, because unless the neighbor knew that his tree was rotting and there was some issue, and then you have to have the right kind of coverage, right?
Yeah, hopefully you have comprehensive.
Yeah, that policy is this thick of ways that they can get out of it.
Yeah, but, it's got comprehensive, not collision. It's one of those things where, they kind of, on TV, the insurance commercials that you see at all the football games and things like that, they kind of make light of accidents, right? There's like a huge crash and everyone's just standing there on their phone. There's not an ambulance. There's not a cop. It's just 2 people like, like a good neighbor, State Farm's there, Jake from State Farm pops up, and that's it. It's like,
Yeah, you're right.
you know,
That's a good point.
you know,
They kind of minimize it. I mean, it's an everyday mainstream. Like you got, like to your point, you got the mayhem guys running around with a neck brace on all the time. Like that's not funny. Like that. I mean, that person that he's mocking is, you know, had a cervical fusion, right?
and he's the one that's, you know, causing all the issues, but it's not the person that's in the vehicle, right? It's a marketing ploy to make everyone think that accidents aren't as bad as we as plaintiffs attorneys are going to make them sound or seem, right? It's, you know, you watch these other car commercials, which you can understand the car commercial, right? Like, oh, it protected my passenger or whatever. But again, you've never seen a State Farm commercial, an Allstate commercial, a Geico commercial where someone's in the hospital getting their medical payments, right?
Yeah.
You get medical payments because you were hurt. It's just, your car is going to get fixed. It's always about the property damage.
Right.
They just,
You're absolutely right.
they sweep the injury part under the rug.
Yeah.
And, you know, we as consumers, all of us are conditioned to what we watch on TV. And so when you see these things, your immediate reaction was, well, I've seen stuff like that on TV. It's not that bad.
Right.
We actually have another episode on that.
Yeah, I agree. I could talk for days on the
Yeah.
you know, the mindset of all that. I think that, you know, it goes right back to it that at the end of the day, we just consumers need to do a better job of protecting themselves with coverage, with proper insurance, understand the insurance. I mean, again, you got your agent, make them explain it to you, make them explain to you exactly how this stuff works. And I know that we're kind of probably getting towards the end, but circling back on something that came up. We've had a couple of these cases pop up. You know, we're in a major metropolitan city, right? Atlanta's a very big city. We've got 8 million people or whatever it is. I take Uber all the time. You know, and in a world where we've got a lot of young professionals and we've got a lot of young folks that you know, go to dinners and go to drinks and go to all these things, it's great, right? I would love to know the data on how much the ride share and you know, Uber, Lyft, whatever you want to call it, has reduced the number of alcohol related car wrecks. Like, great, fantastic. I think that probably something that consumer doesn't know. So this will be my, hey, here, I heard this on a podcast. Maybe this is something that we'll think about.
Perfect.
You know, generally if you're going on a date with your wife, right? I like to take the Uber Black. It's a little bit more expensive. It's like fancy. It's, you know, it's a thing. It
smells nice.
It smells nice. You got nice drivers. You know, these guys are picking the airport with their larger cars. What we found out, we've got a couple of these cases where we've got folks that are in, and I'm going to use Uber as the example here, but Uber Black, right? And you've got the option. You can pick, you know, the X or the XL or the Pool, which sounds really cool, by the way. I just get ride around the city with a bunch of random folks, but whatever. But you've got the Black. And so, and we've got a case or a couple of cases now where an Uber Black has been rear-ended by an uninsured or underinsured motorist, right? And we've sent our general letters of representation, and our clients are like, hey, no big deal. I'm in Uber. And everybody knows that if you're in an Uber, there's an Uber policy that exists that would extend coverage should you be injured, right? Both liability and So you're riding around in Uber, somebody else hits you, it's their fault, no problem, you're covered. We have now uncovered or figured out in Uber's infinite wisdom that if you hire an Uber Black, meaning it's a limousine, they treat these vehicles as professional drivers for hire, meaning they don't extend coverage to those vehicles.
They have their own.
They have their these drivers are required to carry their own coverage. However, in the state of Georgia, there's no requirement that you carry insurance. So the scenario is the three of us decide we're going to go watch some football. We don't drink and drive. We call an Uber Black because, you know, we like to drive in style. We get rear-ended. We call Uber and say, hey, we were rear-ended. You know, our backs are messed up. We'd like to know what the policy of coverage is. Uber responds, because this is a driver for hire, we do not extend any coverage. So, you know, you kind of get this sense of security when you're driving around in this nicer car, and you've actually got less coverage, zero coverage, than you would have had if you're riding around in like a hoopty, right? Like
and they're also not required to have more than just, they can have the state minimum as well.
No, and a lot of these cab companies they've got and limo and cab companies, they're carrying $25,000 liability limits only and kind of rolling the dice on whether or not it works. So I guess my bulletin, my announcement to the consumer is, really recognize that just because you're in a nice car and you're in a nice Lyft or an Uber or ride share service, and this goes for calling a limo too, the guy that you'd like to take you to the airport, right? They may not have coverage. And so it's even more important that if you're going to be riding around with somebody else, that you're going to protect yourself. And again,
Treat yourself.
treat yourself. Yeah, I think, again, get the FUBU insurance, man. Get the FUBU insurance. Like, go buy understand from your agent and pay for the add-on.
The biggest takeaway for me, Trey, is that the corporations are constantly working towards protecting themselves at the expense of everyday consumers, and everyday consumers are completely oblivious to it because it's not an issue. It's not a problem until it becomes a problem, and that's when you learn about it.
And it's usually a huge problem.
Yeah. And that's sort of the purpose of having these kinds of conversations, to put the content out there and be like, look, this is what exists.
Oh, for sure.
Well, I mean, I think that you're doing a huge service to the consumer and to the public and to the community, local community. And I know this is more Georgia geared, but hopefully it reaches somebody who says, man, I do need to go look at my insurance. I need to go check this out and see what's going on, because just like every day, we come to work and we represent these great people against these large corporations. These same corporations are the ones that are in mainstream providing this information, providing this data, and they're sure as hell not going to tell you the way that they're missing the gap. They're not going to tell you the holes in which they've created that 90% of these people end up falling in, right?
Right.
And I think that it just goes right back to, a bit of a disgust about the way that they do it, but also a bit of admiration. Like, man, you guys are very smart about how
they're committed to what they do.
Yeah.
so incredibly good at screwing over people, right? Like, I mean, bravo, you are great at what you do.
They make it an art form.
They really do.
Like a good neighbor, we will take from you.
Yeah, we will. Yeah. We'll screw you over better than anybody.
Yeah.
Boys, I could sit here and talk to you guys for hours. You know that we do it at networking events.
Yeah, for sure.
For the sake of data on the laptop, I'm going to wrap this episode up. I would love for you guys to come back. At the end of every podcast, though, I always provide the guest. Today we've got two. Anything that you think that we didn't cover, a question that you wish I would have asked, something that's in your heart, something important, a parting thought for the listeners.
So I would just say, be honest with your lawyer and do everything you can to look out for yourself and your case.
I agree with that. I think that, as lawyers, we often talk in summation as opposed to new information. To your point, I think we could sit here and talk for days about all of the nuances and stuff that we deal with. But, I think that I hope people are listening to this, and I hope that they're actively listening, because I think that we covered a lot of really, really good stuff today. And I mean that. I think that you're doing a really huge service to the community, and I hope people are listening.
I appreciate that.
And I hope people are taking the steps, right? Like, don't let this go in one and out the other. Like,
Yeah.
protect your family. If that's the thing that makes you like pick up the phone and call your agent, or that's the thing that makes you pick up the phone and call your lawyer, or if you're in that type of situation, to think about the holistic situation. If this is the podcast that made you like get up, I would treat it as, hey, like, I'm going to take this one step that's going to take me half a second to protect my family, because
Yeah.
I guarantee you the clients that we've talked about, the gentleman that passed away, unfortunately, I guarantee you he didn't leave his house that day knowing that he was going to pass away. And we never know when the call is going to come, and I think that you need to be prepared. I think a lot of times we sit around and say, well, I'll deal with that tomorrow, or I'll handle that later, or I'll get my affairs in order, when it gets closer to time, religious or not. Like, I think a lot of people just assume that they're going to be able to handle stuff before that day comes, and we just never know. I think that, you'd be doing your family a huge disservice if you don't deal with this stuff now and understand this stuff now. And there are plenty of people to explain it to you.
That's actually a great final thought. I agree with you. Do it now. Do it before you're ready. We started out with that thought.
That's right. Yeah. Full circle.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for tuning in for another episode. Today's episode was chock full of information, so you may want to rewatch it. I don't know how many of you will, but I know my mom will, because she loves me and she watches every episode. Mom, I love you. Thank you for watching. Everyone else, please share, comment, and subscribe. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. We'll respond to them. May even invite you on to talk about it. Take care, everybody.